Today's episode is sponsored by HireSuite. HireSuite CRM helps talent acquisition teams hire more people by automating your outreach and nurturing your talent pipelines, allowing your talent teams to be a lot more productive. If you haven't tried HireSuite, head to hiresuite.com and try it out for free.
Welcome to Crafty Sourcer. If you're looking for a raw, unfiltered podcast on all things sourcing in APAC, you've come to the right place. Grab a coffee or wine and join your host and other guests as we dive deep into the complex and ever-evolving world of sourcing, keeping you informed on insights, tools, and even at times, a healthy sourcing debate or two. Now, here's your host, Denise Pereira from Kaleidosource. Settle in and let's get crafty.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Crafty Saucer. Now, folks, today we've got a guest who is almost a triple threat. They can multitask between sourcing candidates, rehearsing his lines, delivering punchlines. Now, what I mean by that is they have been a theatre actor for almost 10 years, and now they have a newly found passion in stand up comedy, obviously alongside sourcing. And if people say sources are boring, I think Raj Singh is a perfect example that we are definitely not. So, all the way from the land of the long white cloud, New Zealand, Raj Singh, welcome, and it's great to have you join us today.
Oh, thanks a lot, Denise. And I would really appreciate if you could send this copy of that introduction to my mother in law. That'll be really great. And so thanks for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate that. I was just wondering, if I can start with a small karakia, that is one of the Maori cultures.
Yes, please go ahead.
Right. Kia ora, everyone. Ko Raj toko inua. In English, if that was to be translated, I'm saying greetings, everyone. My name is Raj, and I would like to begin this particular podcast with a karakia. And before I do that, I just want to let you know that karakia is basically an important custom in Maori culture. It's used in different settings. When you are beginning a long journey, or, when you're opening a particular building, to the public, or beginning a meeting or closing a meeting. So, from a meeting's point of view, karakias are often about acknowledging the shared goals of everyone, who are gathered together, the sacredness of the agenda, and creating that sense of collective action. So it's a goal that we should all strive toward. That is what the sense is achieved in terms of a karakia. So they're all about hospitality and gratitude, and I would say that the recognition of the world around us. So this is why karakias are very important in terms of the Maori culture. So let me cite the small karakia, and I'll give a translation also after that. So here it goes. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta. Kia mā taratara ki tai. Ehi ake ana te atakura. He tio, he huka, he hauhu. Tihe moriora. So roughly translated, this means seize the winds from the west, seize the winds from the south, let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the ocean, let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened air, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. So that's how we start, Denise. Thanks for having me recite the Karakia. Now I'm all yours. Hit me with your questions.
Wow. Wow, Raj, that was absolutely beautiful. And, to have you as our first guest from New Zealand and to kick off the podcast like that, that was absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and the rest of the listeners.
Thank
So
you.
before we, Raj, get into everything, I tend to ask this question. I've already done a very slight introduction into who you are, but I'd love for you to give us a very quick intro into who is Raj and how did you fall in love with sourcing?
Nice. That's a good question. Yeah. So who is Raj? Obviously people would see at my picture, people have seen my LinkedIn profile, now that you posted this podcast. I would like to say what Raj is not. Looks can be deceiving. So when you look at my picture, I promise you one thing, all the listeners, I promise you one thing, I'm not a taxi driver. So when people look at me, they feel, oh, like, he must be driving a taxi. No, I'm sorry, I don't. In terms of how did I fall in love with sourcing, I would say, oh, you know what, Denise, it's a really heartbreaking story. It really goes back when I was, in the college. I had no girlfriends. I tried my best, but I could never have girlfriends. So I used to stalk girls. That's what I used to do. But honestly, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I never stalked those girls. But yeah, one thing is for sure that I never had girlfriends. I don't have any girlfriends as of right, which is definitely a topic of discussion for some other podcast, which we'll cover. But in terms of my love for sourcing, as you must have seen, that I started my career with sales, and one fine day I had just enough of that, and I thought that I need to change my field, and I went for an interview. The first interview that I had was with one of the staffing companies, and somehow in the interview I could kind of convince them that I'll be able to sell your people. They said that's good. And what else you can do? I said, you know what? Besides that, I could sell you people. I could also teach how to sell people. So would that be something of your interest? And they said yes. That was the entry into recruitment and staffing that I would say. Now, some people in that organization were doing sourcing. So when I kind of had an interaction with them, something drew me towards what they were doing. And slowly and steadily, social media came into existence, and I started getting in touch with who's who of sourcing world, and followed them and saw what they were doing, and really got interested. And so that's how I kind of started, and fell in love with what sourcing is all about, and never looked back.
First of all, I was obviously on mute. I was laughing behind the scenes when you said, I have to say what Raj is not. Obviously, I'm Pakistani, so I resonate so well with the taxi cab driver comment, and obviously 7-Eleven as well. So well done on starting with that joke, Raj. Raj, what is sourcing to you? Now, the reason why I ask this question from every guest is that we all have our perspectives on what sourcing is. Everybody does, but I think it's really good to put a lens of a personal lens on what is sourcing to you as a source and as an individual, and what is the value that you see that it can have from an impact perspective to any organization.
Interesting. Sourcing, according to me, let me begin by asking you a few questions. And these are not trick questions, these are very simple questions. So if I ask you what is 7 plus 3, what will be your answer?
Look, I'm really bad in maths, but I'll give this a go, and if I get it wrong, I'm hoping it's 10. I guess it's 10.
Yeah,
Am
it
I
is
right?
10 because it's not a trick question. So what is 2 multiplied by 5?
10.
And what is 20 divided by 2?
10.
10. Yeah, you got that right. Yeah. What I'm trying to say over here is, Denise, that there are numerous ways of reaching to the result 10. If somebody would ask me, what is it, what does sourcing mean to you? Sourcing means to me is that you have to reach to a conclusion of finding that person, or finding those people. And there are numerous ways of doing that. It wouldn't make a difference as to what way you take, to reach to that sort of a conclusion, as long as you are reaching to your required destination. So sourcing is all about finding those people. So never get overwhelmed by people if they are throwing a lot of jargons to you, and if a lot of people are doing a lot of things. Because as a sourcer, the first thing what you feel is you feel lessened in a way. You feel that, oh, I'm perhaps less than that other person. You would always be less than that other person, because other person would always have few more things in up their sleeves that you might not have. So it's all about keeping yourself open. It's all about having that confidence on yourself with what you're doing. Your way of reaching that 10 might be completely different from someone else. But the bottom line is that you will definitely be reaching to that sort of a conclusion. So that's what I personally feel that, that's a very important aspect of sourcing. And that's what sourcing means to me as an individual. Coming to the second part of the question, where you said that, what is the value that it brings to the organization? I would say nothing. Now, it's a very surprising answer, but then I actually mean it. It doesn't bring any value. Because as a sourcer, I would say that, most of the people who are listening to us would understand that as a sourcer, more often than not, you are pitching to the people who do not know what sourcing is all about. So if you go out there trying to pitch to these people by going on an internet and seeing what are the benefits of sourcing or what are the advantages of sourcing and creating those 5 points and going up to them and trying to tell them that what is the benefit or what is the value that the sourcing is going to bring to them or to their organization, I mean, it hardly works. It doesn't work like that. So, as a sourcer, what my point is, acknowledge the fact that when you are trying to talk about sourcing to someone, your first goal has to be that understand where their pain points are, understand what is the problem that they are trying to solve, and give them the answers based on the problems that these people would have or the issues that these people are facing on a day-to-day basis. Throw out all your bookish knowledge out the window. It's not going to work out. Understand what the requirements or what the pain points of that individuals is, and then accordingly pitch it to them. And that is the sort of a value that you can bring in for sourcing to those people and their organizations.
Raj, first of all, you gave me a bit of childhood PTSD by asking me those math questions
I'm
because
so
I
sorry for
was because I was maths was probably my weakest subject. So, and I think I kind of showed that when you asked me what was 20 by divided by 5. I think you make a very controversial point, because I tend to ask this question a lot of times, but you also make a very valid point that if you keep drilling something to someone that doesn't understand the value, it's like knocking your head against a brick wall,
Yeah,
right? But it comes back to the pain points. So go back to understanding what the business pain points are, what problems are you trying to solve, then make a strategy, a plan in place, and then move forward from there. Because then you're sort of coming to a mid ground of where someone who doesn't really understand sourcing, but they understand the pain points, you're coming from a sourcing element, both meeting halfway to solve the same
right.
problem, but from different angles, right?
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Raj, you're a senior sourcing lead at Te Whatuora, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, and
Yep.
that is within the health space. What's been the most eye opening aspect for you about working in the health sector?
So, see, Denise, we are basically the largest employer of in New Zealand. We are the largest ones. So in terms of our employee strength, we must be anywhere close to around 100,000 people right now. So we are one of the largest employers. And we weren't that small, I would say, in any case, pre July 2022. So, in the month of July 2022, the 20 different district health boards and various allied services all across New Zealand, we came under the umbrella of Te Whatuora. That is Health New Zealand. Before that, they were all individual units. Now, all of them have come under the same umbrella. My biggest, I would say that the kind of eye opening working into this space was at the time when I started with this organization. Besides the fact that we were so big, my biggest eye opening thing was that there was no one doing sourcing in such a huge organization. Sourcing wasn't a function at all, which I felt was good and bad because I had to start from the scratch. It was good because I had to start from the scratch. And honestly speaking, Denise, at the time when I started, the only thing that I had was me, myself. I had my Excel sheets and I had my internet connection. That's about it. There were no tools, there was no nothing, everything was manual. That's how I started, which was really great, at the time when we started the journey, because we had a lot of plans in the mind. How are we going to execute those plans? Everything kind of started falling in place. We did a lot of hits and trials. We were dealing with people perhaps who were not keen about what sourcing is, or they had no information or knowledge about what sourcing is. So having all those barriers also side by side started the whole thing. Just to give you an example, when we started, like a psychiatry as a specialization was always under allocated, meaning we had more openings than the people who would apply for the training, working in the psychiatry as a specialty. So when I started in 2018 and starting 2019, 2020 and 2021, continuously for 3 years, psychiatry as a specialty was always over allocated when we started doing sourcing for that particular specialty. So it was all about finding those people, identifying those people, cross referencing those people, finding their contact details, reaching out to those people, keeping them warm, keeping them engaged with what we were doing, and finally at the time when we had our annual recruitment cycles, or when we had those recruitment that was ad hoc that was supposed to happen, we used to jump on into our talent pool and find people from there and have them apply for the jobs. So it really kind of had a different sort of a turnaround, like, with the specialty being under allocated all the time from being over allocated, like, continuously for 3 years. I guess, like, I mean, and besides that, there were a lot of other things that we worked on, and, like, we created that sort of a success story that I would say would be one of the things, like, we really enjoyed working in that space and creating our successes.
So, Raj, with obviously the health space being very different to tech, I'd imagine the stakeholders would are not only different, but they are also a different breed when it comes to understanding what sourcing is. So, can you just very quickly talk us through about how did you have to? First of all, they didn't have a sourcing function, so
Mhm.
to educate them on, hey, it's still a part of talent acquisition. While it still sits as part of talent acquisition, it's not recruiting as you know it.
Hmm.
So, how did you all go about sort of educating the business around that?
See, I mean, we had to find those, project champions for us. I would say that, no, I mean, if we approached 10 people when we spoke to them about what sourcing is and what sourcing can do, not all those 10 people were receptive. Most of the people, like, were pretty comfortable with the conventional style of recruitment. If you have an open role, you advertise, you wait for people to apply. And from there on, the situation takes play shape, whether you have enough people or whether you don't have enough people. You just kind of wait and watch. So when we went up to them, what my idea was that, psychiatry, I'll take an example of psychiatry. What I did was, like, we did, before actually we approached the stakeholders, we did a lot of homework. So I created a talent pool, a long list, you could say. No, I wouldn't say exactly a talent pool, it was more of a long list, because at that point of time, even I was understanding what the specialty is all about. Who are the people that we should be approaching, or who are the people who would be the right kind of audience for us. So my first approach to the smo in psychiatry was smo. What I would mean is the senior medical officer. So we just went up to them and we said that, hey, you know what, I do have a long list of some psychiatry registrars that I want to run past you, show you the kind of people that we have found, and you tell us what you feel about it. So we just ran through a long list of around 20-25 people with him. He went through all the profiles, and out of those 25 people, he said, you know what, out of these 25, I would say 15 people are pretty good for us. We would definitely be interested in talking to these 15. So, which was a good score in any ways, because that was for me also at that point of time. I was trying to understand what this whole requirement is all about. I went back again and I replicated that long list. From 15, I went up to almost like 150 people. So then I went up to them and I said, you know what, we are ready to approach these 150 people. What sort of a message do you think that we should be going out to these people with? Ideally, we were a little active in a way that, I didn't want that message to go out from a sourcer or from a recruiter. I actually wanted that message to go out from the most senior doctor, who is the psychiatry head of the area. They should be sending that message. So he said yes to it. He agreed with that. And the message went out on behalf of the senior medical officer to all these 150 people that we had shortlisted. So that in itself, like, I mean, if a recruiter is sending a message or a senior doctor is sending a message to a junior doctor saying that he would want to talk to you, so the response was better. Like, so people came back and they responded back. And from there on, we had turned the tide around, like, and it was just one specialty. When they saw that specialty is making waves, the word kind of spread around like a wildfire, and then a lot of other specialties were interested in talking to us, and they wanted to know what sourcing is. So we kind of softened them, I would say, that, with that sort of a strategy.
And I feel like more hiring managers need to realize that hiring is a team sport. And there
Yes.
is so much value in hiring managers just saying yes. A small example being running referral jams or sourcing jams, just to show them how searches are done and to get their input. If we are missing something, what can their input do and what could those results look like?
Hmm.
And just show them what those profiles look like. So having their input is so important in making sure not just finding the people, but also getting these people into the talent pool. Finding tech people is hard. So
Mm.
I'd imagine finding health professionals would be possibly even harder. What tools, strategies have been most efficient in finding and engaging with them? And where do you go about finding these medical professionals if
Oh my
besides
God.
LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, that is a real pain point, that you've touched right now. So finding these health professionals, right? They are very rarely to be found on social media, and even if they are on social media, they would not be active. So just imagine someone studying medicine in the college. Career counselor must have told them, "How about you create a LinkedIn profile?" And they would have created a LinkedIn profile in the college, and after that they haven't even visited that. Luckily, I would say that comparable health systems to New Zealand that we have across the world, people would have their own registers where the information is available, but the only information that you can get from there is a name. Many a times, I mean, there is a big challenge. Now, for example, like if I have someone called Liz Smith on LinkedIn, she could be Elizabeth Smith as a real name. But on LinkedIn, she calls herself as Liz Smith. So it becomes very difficult. So on LinkedIn, the only point I could see is that, when did they start the college or when did they finish the college? So when they have finished the college, I pick up that day year, and from that year I go on to that medical register. That register, I play around with those names and I play around with those last names, hit and run. You might find some, you might not find some people. So it's a huge process and a very manual sort of a process, with which we have to actually find the real names of these people many a times. People might be there on Instagram or on Facebook, but then on Instagram they wouldn't mention that they are a psychiatry registrar. They would just give the names. And a lot of times, when we are going out there and when we are finding people on Instagram, if in the picture, you find people in their scrubs, we assume that they are from the medicine, and we go ahead and we try and reach those people and try to engage. There is a lot of cross referencing that happens, through various social media channels that we try to get these people from. Also, there are a lot of unique ways of out of the box ways of reaching out to people. Now, for example, if I'm trying to reach junior doctors in the UK, what I would do, or what I had done in the past, was that all the NHS hospitals that you have in the UK, every NHS has their own doctors' mess where junior doctors would get together. They would have annual ball, or they would have a meeting, like junior doctors would get together. And every mess has president. So what we did was we created a list of 75 junior doctors messes, and we reached out to all those presidents in that junior doctors messes, saying that we are from New Zealand, Auckland, and this is what we are doing right now. Would it be okay for you to share our message with your junior doctor? Not everyone was impressed. Not everyone was okay with that. Still, we had some people responding back saying, "Hey, you know what? We've got a Facebook page, or we have a Facebook event, or we have ways of reaching out to people. We'll definitely pass your information to these guys." And a lot of times, Denise, those sort of activities, they might not give you a response there and then. Just last month, I was sharing one of the emails with one of my managers over here. I sent that email to a candidate in 2019, and the person replied back to my email just 1 month back saying, "Hi Raj, I'm sorry, that I'm late, but I had always kept your email with me, and I knew when the time would be right, I'll get in touch with you. So now I think I'm ready to explore what New Zealand has to offer. What is it that you have for me?" What I'm trying to tell you over here is that, those sort of activities that you need to do, you need to think outside of the box and, try to reach out to those people. Not necessarily that everyone is going to be on social media. Even if they are on social media, they might not be active. So you have to work out various ways and various styles of reaching out to people. So use various tools as well, I'm using one of the tools called Loxo, that's Loxo, using that to have the engagement strategy. I use another technique where we created quizzes, for these people, answer these 10 quizzes to know what it takes to be successful working in Auckland. So we created those quiz, and there's an application called involve.me. I use that, and I create those quizzes. We created a lot of testimonial videos, which create wonders, people who are from UK or who are from Australia or Ireland, who are here in New Zealand, who have recently started, we went up to them and we created those 2 minutes, 3 minutes quick testimonial videos as to what their experience has been. So a doctor speaking to a doctor is way better than a sourcer or recruiter trying to speak to a doctor. And someone who is from the UK and who is in New Zealand, and when they talk about their experiences of being here in New Zealand or in Auckland, that connects better to a doctor who's there in UK, who's trying to, or who hasn't even thought about coming to New Zealand, but has wouldn't mind thinking about it now that he has seen someone who has taken that sort of a decision. So those are the things, that kind of really worked.
That's really interesting, Raj, and it's good that you touched on associations. And hats off to you. Like, you were super polite to even reach out to the presidents and somewhat kindly ask them for their permission. Normally, we wouldn't be doing that. We would just go
Yeah.
straight to the junior doctors and be like, "Hey, are you interested in relocating to Auckland?"
Because ultimately, there is a moral value also involved in this. Now, see, the point is that overall, not just in New Zealand, I would say worldwide, healthcare industry is crying for more people. Yeah. So I cannot be super selfish of going out there and picking up a doctor from UK, and okay, the doctor from UK has come to New Zealand, but the doctor from UK, has created a space where they were working. So that is also affecting the people, like it's affecting patients. So in healthcare, I would say that we do have some sort of a moral compass that it's very important. So I can't just go out there and try to pick up each and every person and ask them to come to me and working. We actually wouldn't want to do that. So we just want to make sure that we go in the right way and keep people informed, keep people in the loop, and a lot of exchange facilities also. A lot of people who spoke to us from the UK recruitment departments of various NHSs. So we talk to them. We say, hey, you know what? If there is someone who wants to come to New Zealand, please share those leads with us. And be rest assured, if someone wants to come to UK from New Zealand, we'll share those leads with you as well.
I like the fact that you sort of touched on using different mediums, platforms. And you're right, sourcing is about being creative, thinking out of the box.
Yeah.
We have to, because it's not just about the hiring now, it's about thinking about that long term impact of, reaching out to someone now, like that example you gave of, 2019, and now that person has reached out, about
Yeah.
4 years later. Let's talk about some misconceptions about sourcing. We've all faced it, we've all been a part of it. What are some of the common misconceptions you've seen that have come your way, and what's your advice on tackling some of them?
Misconceptions, it's really interesting, and a lot of times people specifically, if they do not know what sourcing is all about or what it entails, a lot of times I find that people think we are magicians. We have a magic wand in our hands, and they'll just tell us that, okay, this is where we are facing an issue and we want someone, and we'll be able to fill those roles yesterday. I'm sorry. That's not how it's going to be happening. Like I basically do is when people talk to me showing that sort of an urgency for a particular role, I always tell them that, yeah, of course, I'll definitely be working on this role with you. But if you give me some time to strategize and implement and execute my plan on this particular role, I promise you one thing, that you will never be in a situation, the kind of situation that you are in right now, where you are crying for help. You'll never be in that situation, because I'll always have a talent pool for you. I'll have a talent pool, and which would be full of qualified and warm potential candidates. And at any point in time, if we have an open role that comes up, we can just dig into that pool and we can hire our people. Of course, I'll work on this particular role for you, no doubt, because you asked for my help, but it's not going to be happening with a flip of a finger. It's going to take some time. That's how I kind of clear their misconception. I feel is that a lot of times, people feel that sourcing is basically going on LinkedIn and putting some keywords over there, and applications and CVs, and people will start falling in your inbox. No, it doesn't happen like that. We all know that, there's a lot of hard work that is involved behind that. There's a lot of accumulation of knowledge that you need to have in terms of what sourcing is all about. And most importantly, I would say executing the plan of action of the engagement piece is important. Because I remember once, I created a long list. I had their contact details. The hiring manager wanted their own team to approach those people. They took the long list and they approached, I think we had close to around 30 people in that long list. So they approached all those people and they came back to me after those 30 people, and they came back to me after 2 weeks saying that we haven't even had even a single positive response. I said, great. What happened? I mean, how did you approach those people? So the message, I asked them that, did you tailor make the message? Yes, the message was tailor made. Like, how was the message tailor made? So the only tailor making that they did in that message was that they changed the names of every individual. I was like, very happy with that. and, and the message was almost on the verge of, hi, my name is so and so, and I have a job. Would you be interested in applying? That is what the message read. Now, what you need to understand is that this is a passive pool of candidate, like who do not even know who you are, who do not even know what sort of jobs are available. You can't just go out there straight away to tell them, hey, apply for this job, apply for this job. I would say that, sourcing is all about executing that plan of action, getting those results. So these are few of the misconceptions that come to mind, when people have, when they think or talk about sourcing.
Raj, this has been fantastic. And the fact that you brought your sense of humor along with it, and also a lot of your insight from a very different perspective, and the perspective being the industry that you work in. Because a lot of us in sourcing are typically within tech. A lot of us are. So to get your take on it, it's not as easy as ABC, but
Yeah.
also, some of the tactics that you've had to use in order to find these people, and really thinking outside of the box, I think is probably what I'm taking away from this. Is you've got to get as creative as you can, and don't stop. Don't just constantly keep trying one way of doing things. You have to try multiple different avenues of
Yes.
doing things. Raj, we've come to time, but again, I would love to thank you for gracing us with your presence here. Before we end this, is there any last piece of advice that you'd like to add before we close?
Last piece of advice, I would say that don't get disheartened or deflated like when you come across people who do not understand sourcing. Take it as your responsibility to turn those tables. I would say that, just make sure that you have that strategy in place, strategize, and then execute your plan. That is what will give you the kind of desired results that you're after.
That's really good advice. And talent acquisition, as we know, can be a little unforgiving. And sometimes, we don't get the credit for all the hard work that we tend to do, or it just becomes like an invisible patch at times. Raj, thank you once again for giving up your time to spend some time with us on this podcast. So thank you once again, Raj.
And Denise, before we go, I'll just cite the ending karakia as well, if
Yes,
you
please.
allow me to. Yeah. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa po namu te moana. Hie huarahi matato I te rangi nei. Aroha ato, aroha mai, tato e te tato katoa. Huie taikie. So that means, may peace be widespread, may the sea be like green stone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another.
Beautiful once again, Raj.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Denise. Thanks for
Thank you
having
so
me. Really
much.
appreciate it.
You're welcome. Everybody, thank you so much, and stay crafty.
Cheers.